I'm going to show you how you can quickly spice up your students' 12-bar blues improvising with just a few little tricks. Remember that in jazz, and for any time I improvise or compose on the piano, you make stuff up on the piano, there's some certain go-to things that I know are going to work. And most musicians who spend any time improvising have these little tricks that they know will work. They might know a chord progression that's good. They might know a little melodic fragment that's good. Having a little pattern repertoire is really important for being able to be comfortable improvising. So here are a few of the little tricks to turn the blues scale that we looked at in lesson 2, which was, into something that's a little bit more interesting for students. So again, I've got a lesson plan for you here where I've notated these little tricks and ideas for you. The first one is to add some slides, I guess we'd call them, or achacaturas if you're classically trained. So there's tiny little crossed out notes. And in the first example here on the sheet I've given you, it's an E and a G with fingers 3 and 5, but we're going to slide off the E flat with your second finger. So I get this sound. And it also works really nicely on B and D, and also on F and C. Depends what chord you're playing underneath. If I'm playing some kind of C chord, then these two work because they're the top notes of a C chord, or the G chord, or the F chord. So that can be something that your student could add to their improvising. So what I'd suggest is that with iReal Pro playing the backing track, you get them to start improvising just using the scale, and then every now and then add a little bit of that to it. So let's hear it. So it sounds something like this. So all of these things are just designed to spice up the improvising that they've already got a grounding in from lesson 2. So we're not changing anything, we're just adding some little tricks that sound really, really cool. All right, now the next one is one of my favorites. Kids love the sound of this, and that is to play a triplet feel against the blues backing track. Kind of a feeling. And sometimes it can be good to actually do this off the bench before you do it on the piano. So maybe just getting them to tap a triplet feel while you play the backing track. Something like this. Or, like with any tapping exercise that you give them, try and get them to feel the stronger beat in the bar and accent it. It's a great way to ensure that they're getting in a groove. It's the same thing as if you were getting them to clap or feel the difference between 3/4 and 4/4. You'd want them to accent the first beat. Otherwise, it actually will just, you can't tell what time signature it's in. So onto the piano. I tend to use G and C as two great notes to do this with. So we get kind of a sound. And you can try this as well. Once they know this, they could try that in triplets as well. Now, this is a little bit more complicated. You've got to repeat notes quickly. So some students may have trouble with this. You might want to slow the backing track down to start with. But I'll just give you a quick overview of how you can add this in. The important thing to note for students is that they don't just do this the whole way through. We need to explore with them the idea that improvising needs both variety and it needs space. often students, when they're first trying to improvise, they'll just try and do too much. And often it's the simple things with a bit of space around it that actually sound the best. All right, so another kind of take on that is to play a little riff that keeps the one note the same, often the C, while a different note changes. So in the example that I've given you on the sheet, this kind of thing is a really, really cool sounding idea for improvising. Don't know why it sounds so good, but it certainly does. Let's try it out with the backing. So you get the idea. Now that alone is just gold, right? And as a teacher, if you ever need to improvise something in a jazz style, remember that concept, because it's such an easy way to sound really, really cool and sound like the music you're playing is much harder than it actually is. Try it out with students. A slight variation on that is the last one that I've given you on the sheet, where you could change the bottom note while you're holding the top note. Now, of course, there's many more ways you could interpret these, and these are purely ideas to get you and your students thinking. You don't have to stick to only these. You could just give them these ideas, or give them one a lesson over a few weeks and say, add that to your improvising and see what happens. And, you never know what students will actually come back with. So my hope that is for your students that at the end of this lesson, that they'll be able to try playing the chords. They'll have some different left-hand patterns to use. They'll be able to do far more interesting improvising, and hopefully be able to really groove with you when they come back in their next lesson. So what I might do is just play through the backing track one more time and put all those ideas together in one improvisation, so that you can see the kind of things that you'll be able to do yourself and also with your students. And there you go. There's a far more interesting improvised section, just using one hand and the backing track. I mean, I'm having fun. I know you're going to have fun, and I know your students are going to really enjoy what they can do with this. Hey, just before you go, make sure you click here to subscribe, and we've got thousands of other videos all on the topic of music education and teaching. So make sure you check out some of those other ones here, and I'll see you in the next video.